Hi, welcome back. I'm Roger, and this is my own little kitchen. So far, I've shown you how to make pasta. I've shown you how to make ravioli filling. Now what are you going to do with that? Let's make spaghetti sauce. For the sauce, I have 6 cans of crushed tomatoes, 6 minced garlic cloves. This is a blend of half a teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of oregano, 1 teaspoon of rosemary, and a half teaspoon of red pepper flakes. This is 12 ounces of tomato paste. 1 cup of onion, minced. Minced is a little bit finer than diced. You don't want to go all the way to a real mince because the smaller the particles that you cut things into, the quicker they can burn. 1 cup of water and olive oil. We'll be using about 2 teaspoons of this. I already have the pan heating up, so let's get started. So I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of olive oil to a hot pan. And when you see it start shimmering a little bit, that means it's ready. I'm going to add the onions. I'm going to add the spices. I'm going to let that cook down a little bit before I add the garlic. You want to add the garlic last so that it doesn't burn. Stir that around for a second. Then we add the tomato paste. Don't want to waste any. And the 6 cans of the crushed tomatoes. Once you start adding the liquid, it cuts down on the cooking process of all your little ingredients like the onions and the garlic, so you have less chance of burning them. I can feel that tomato paste breaking down, so I'm not getting clumps of it anymore. At this point, this is completely vegetarian. If you want to leave it that way, you have nothing else to do except bring it to a simmer and then keep stirring it for about an hour or 2 throughout the cook time until it thickens up. So, this is a basic spaghetti sauce recipe. There are as many recipes for spaghetti sauce as there are people in the United States. Everybody has their own take on it. Some people use only fresh ingredients. Others, like me, like to use the canned ingredients because it's a consistent product. Sometimes you get tomatoes that aren't flavorful. Sometimes you get fresh tomatoes that are wonderful. But if you use the canned tomatoes, you have a consistent product and a consistent taste. As far as cooking goes, it will take anywhere between an hour and a half 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on how you like the consistency. The only thing you have to watch for is you have to stir it on a regular basis to make sure it doesn't burn. The last episode, we made spaghetti sauce, which is still boiling away here. I'm sorry, simmering away here on the stove. At this point, it's completely vegetarian, but some people like to add stuff to their sauce to give it more flavor. It could be meatballs, it could be sausage, it can be brujol, which is an Italian rolled flank steak. Right now we're going to do meatballs. In this bowl I have 1 pound of ground beef. I prefer to use the 80-20 ratio because it has enough fat for flavor. To this we're going to be adding a 1/2 cup of dried parsley, a 1/4 cup of grated Romano cheese. If you don't have Romano cheese, you can use Parmesan. Here we have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. Not garlic salt, just the powder. We also have a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper in that. Here we have 1 egg. I'll start mixing it up with the spatula here, but then I'm going to get in there with my hands. It's very much a consistency thing, not so much that you can see, but what you can feel. Now that I've got that pretty much mixed in, I'll start adding some of the Italian seasoned breadcrumbs. This is a 1/2 cup. I may not need all of it. It will all depend on the meat mixture. This may sound strange, but what you want to get it to is basically the consistency of a pâté. And one thing I'm not doing, I'm not squeezing it, I'm only stirring it, because you don't want to start making hard little meatballs yet. Just a little bit more, and that should do it. Now, from here, I'm going to make a few larger meatballs, but I know that a recipe is coming up that calls for Italian wedding soup. And Italian wedding soup calls for mini meatballs. So I'm going to take this pound of meat and split it between the two. Something else I'm going to do, I'm also going to cook some sweet Italian sausage. I don't brown them on the stove. I like to cook everything in the oven to make sure it's thoroughly cooked and the outside isn't brown. So this is about the consistency that you want it. It's holding together, there are spices and breadcrumbs and all of it, but it's not overly dry. So again, it's going to hold together. And what I want to do now is take some non-stick cooking spray. I can use that, or you can use olive oil. It doesn't make any difference. You just want something to prevent it from sticking to the tray. So first I'm going to make the little meatballs that I'm going to need for the wedding soup in one of the upcoming recipes. So with that, you're talking about maybe at the most an ounce. If you don't trust your feelings, get yourself a kitchen scale and roll them out and do them that way so that you know that you've got about no more than an ounce. Some people will make it half an ounce. I'm going to put these on a separate tray than the meatballs and the sausage, than the larger meatballs and the sausage, because these are going to cook first since they're smaller, obviously. Time to stir the spaghetti sauce. Oh, that's cooking down nicely. If you like Southern Italian cooking, a lot of times Southern Italians will add cinnamon or nutmeg to their sauce, and almost always a little bit of red wine. Both of those are in there. I added it off screen. And as you can see, there's some variation in the size, not a great variation, so they'll cook up about the same. And you might say, well, how is this going to add more flavor to the sauce? Well, as this bakes, it's going to render some of the fat out, and after you take the meatballs out, you can feel free to add as much of the rendered fat out put it into the sauce, or leave it out if you want a lower fat sauce. And you can see the little flecks of cheese, little pieces of parsley, the breadcrumbs. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to really push these down hard, because that makes for a very dense meatball, and they can get on the dry side. I'll move this tray over here. I'll pull this tray over here. I'll add more spray to it. Normally from a pound of meatballs, I can get 8 to 10 meatballs, which means they're a little bit less than a quarter of a pound each. I'm sorry, an eighth of a pound. I'm not very good at math today. It's been a long day. Okay, so I ended up with about 6 meatballs. And on that same tray, I like sweet Italian sausage. They also have mild and they have hot. I prefer the sweet. It has a little more fennel, anise seeds, sweet seasonings, not quite as spicy. To this, I'm going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil to help them brown while they bake and to help stop them from sticking to the pan a little bit. You can see them sliding around the tray now. All right. Clean my hands off a little bit and into the preheated oven. I have it preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's like 177 degrees Celsius, somewhere around there. The little meatballs will be done in about 10 to 12 minutes. The larger meatballs will be done in about 20 minutes, and the sausage will take about 40. So I'm going to set the timer to 10, and we'll go from there. So that's the end of today's episode. The meatballs and sausage are cooking, the sauce is simmering, and when they come out in the next episode, I'll add it all together along with the ravioli that's in the freezer. In the past episodes, we've made pasta, we've made sauce, we've made meatballs, from the pasta we've done spaghetti, we've done ravioli. Let's put some of that together now. In this pot I have water boiling. In this pot I have the sauce heating up. And I will take out the meatballs and the sausage that I cooked. Again, if you're vegan, you don't have to add this. You just have the sauce as is, and you can have that. The water is boiling. It's always best to add salt to your boiling water. It gives it a little more flavor. Some people say, oh, it reduces the temperature, oh, it does this, oh, it does that. Actually, all it does is add flavor. That was about 2 tablespoons of salt. We'll put the meat in with the sauce, add any juice that came out of it. Now for the pasta. I showed you how to freeze it last time. So here's the pasta, all frozen and ready to go in. If you're not going to cook it that day, it's better to freeze it. If you put it in your refrigerator and go to cook it, it turns to mush. So you can see it's one big clump here. Carefully put that in. Put in all the little bits that broke off. Wait for it to come back up to temperature and it will start breaking apart. It's already loosening up. In the meantime, we'll make sure that the meat is stirred into the pasta. Because we're using fresh pasta as opposed to dry pasta, it won't take long at all. Once it comes back up to a boil, it'll only take a couple of minutes to cook. Alright, we're all set now. The meatballs and sausage are hot. We'll get them out of the saucepan. Next, I'll move this closer. The pasta's been cooking now for about 5 minutes. That's all it needs. You can put this through a strainer, a colander. I just like to take it straight from here into the pan. This way it takes some of the cooking water with it, which helps loosen up the sauce, especially if the sauce has been cooking for a while. It can get kind of dense. The pasta is ready. It's all sauced up and ready to go. I lucked out. It didn't come over the side yet. Let me get a spoon and fix that. Make sure that stays on there. You should always have a box grater. You can do fine grate, medium grate, really fine grate, slices like you would do with a mandolin, or large shredding. I like this side, and I like my Romano cheese. You can use Parmesan. I like Romano. To me, it has a little more flavor. And nothing is better than freshly grated cheese. The stuff you get in the little green bottles, that's not cheese. There you go. You have a meal for probably at least 4 people. Or if you're my family, 2. I'm Roger. Thank you for joining me in my own little kitchen.